Welcome to the #1 show and the source of truth for all things MedTech. Here, we reveal the secrets and stories behind the investments, science, and commercialization of the MedTech industry. Every week, we'll take you on a wild ride with the biggest names in the game, from entrepreneurs and investors who are shaking up the market to healthcare providers who are revolutionizing the way we think and practice medicine. So hold on tight and get ready for a journey like no other. This is the state of MedTech.
What's going on, everybody? So this episode is an interesting one. I'm titling it Rep Life, but it really covers a lot of different topics. And so my guest today is Sam Mahmood. Sam and I got connected through LinkedIn, and we live actually very close by to each other here in SoCal. And Sam runs a distributorship, but then when I got to know Sam, there's a lot more to the story than just some guy who decides to run his own distributorship. And so Sam founded Surgical Republic, which is a completely bootstrapped medical device company in SoCal. How is it a medical device company? Well, on one side, it distributes as a holding company in the neurosurgery, spine, and cardiothoracic specialties. What's interesting, though, is that Sam identified a need in the market and decided to manufacture his own high-end medical device, specifically a kerosene. And so he went through the whole process of finding a manufacturer in Germany, going through the FDA, and bringing it and selling it successfully here in the United States. And he did all this before he turned 30. So it's really, really impressive. The other side of it is that Sam actually is an entrepreneur who is launching a variety of different companies. One that caught my eye, which is called Better MouthTape. And to be fully transparent, I have no affiliate agreement with Better MouthTape. I don't make any money by promoting them, but I can't help but promote products and companies that I really like a lot. And so on the biohacking front, mouth breathing when you go to sleep is actually not just undesirable, it's dangerous. So when you go to sleep, a lot of people breathe through their mouth, and this is usually associated with sleep apnea, which puts people at risk for a lot of cardiovascular diseases. Plus, it impairs and actually changes your craniofacial development in kids. It causes tooth decay, a lot of bad things. The solution, per Andrew Huberman and a huge majority of the medical community, is to become a nasal breather as much of the time as possible, and especially during sleep. So what people started doing is taping their mouth shut before sleep. But another solution that is additionally beneficial is to restrict yourself to nasal breathing during low to moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise. Now, there's a lot of different mouth tapes out there, and I've tried a lot of them. The problem with a lot of them, either A, they cover your entire mouth, which if you're having a dream, you wake up in a panic because you can't breathe. And the ones that do cover only part of your mouth, that allow for lateral mouth breathing during dreaming, they have weird gunk and glue on them. And so Sam founded this company called Better MouthTape with a very unique design. And as a guy who pretty much develops medical products that are extremely high-end and US based, it was a product that I trusted. So I've been trying it, and I actually purchased a whole year supply worth of it. So I highly recommend trying it. Go buy a 30-day supply and try it out. So go to bettermouthtape.com to learn more. And if you give it a try, let me know how you like it. And I personally have seen a lot of benefits from it, and I'm really happy that I found a mouth tape that actually works. So with that being said, you're going to learn a lot about biohacking, about entrepreneurship, and medical devices in this episode. Really loved it. Sam's definitely somebody I'm going to have back on the show. So if you're interested in me having him back, if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, leave a comment below. Give me some feedback and things that you want to hear Sam come back and talk about. So with that being said, here's our episode with Sam Mahmood, founder of Surgical Republic and founder of Better MouthTape. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Sam Mahmood. So Sam's got a really interesting background. So he is he's in the device world. He is a distributor. He's founder and CEO of Surgical Republic. That's how we first got to know each other. He has a really fascinating story of essentially doing what most distributors don't know how to do, which is actually develop a really good quality product and take it to market. The other side is that he just started a new company called Better MouthTape, which has a really big mission around better sleep, biohacking. I'm a very happy customer of theirs. And by the way, I just, as I've mentioned on the LinkedIn post,
even though there's some boomers who got really offended by it, that I'm not a paid sponsor, not an affiliate. I just generally, I really like the product a lot, and we've kind of hit it off. Big on the biohacking world, and we find out we're also both Iraqi. Like what are the chances of that? So Sam, thanks for joining the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. I've been a huge fan of the podcast. You guys are impacting a lot of people in the medical device space, so I'm glad someone's being the pioneer of this.
Yeah, man, we gotta make MedTech great again. So little by little. So maybe a good place to start is like for the audience who is not familiar with you, like can you tell them a little about yourself? Like who are you? What do you do? How did you end up in this industry? Because I don't think anybody goes to college thinking, yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to medical devices after this.
Yeah, for sure. So I went to college and got a degree in global supply chain and business strategy. And I was playing soccer in college as well. So I got a scholarship to go play soccer. And then after playing in soccer, I traveled a little bit to go try to play it professionally. Was in the second division over here in the U.S., traveled a little bit to Europe, try to play. And as an immigrant coming to the U.S., so I'm first generation. My parents are from Iraq, as I told you, as you mentioned. And, you either have to be a engineer, a doctor, or attorney, right? Usually in our background, that's a very common type of place you want to work in. And I wanted to go play soccer. I really did. But then there was an inflection point where I was only making, contracts were offering me around $1,200 a month. And at some point, your parents are not going to support you at all, and I wasn't being supported. So I had this inflection point to say, do I take this job at Edwards Life Sciences or continue trying to play soccer? And I took a supply chain role that lasted around 6 months of me controlling where all these heart valves went all over the world. And I saw these sales reps call me saying, hey, where are my valves? I'm in need of these valves for my surgery tomorrow. And I'm like, well, they're just still stuck in manufacturing. We don't have these available. And I noticed how these sales reps were the ones making the big bucks at the time. So I only lasted in that supply chain job for around 6 months, and then shortly thereafter, I got straight into becoming a territory manager in the craniomaxillofacial space for more or less a fifth tier company that was not very well known in the space at all. And a guy took a swing on me in the sense we both had a collegiate athletic background. He liked my resume in the sense that all I cared about was knowing that I can go make it.
He took a shot on you, right?
He took a shot.
Okay, when you said, I'm not gonna lie, when you said swing, I was imagining, because med devices is pretty, competitive. I was imagining that you're at the scrub sink, somebody was encroaching on someone else's territory, and there was a fight that broke out. Which, by the way, I witnessed at a conference before. So that's what I thought when you said he took a swing on you. Got it. So he took a shot on you. I mean, same colloquialism, but got it. He took you up for the job. Okay, glad we cleared that one up.
Yeah, he took a shot at me and gave me the job when there's a lot of people that were a lot more qualified than me, had sales experience. I had zero sales experience at the time, and I got into selling craniomaxillofacial plates and screws, which is probably the most commoditized.
Why do you think he took that shot on you, by the way?
Because when I showed up to the interview, it was my fifth or sixth interview that week that I got shut down on. And then I finally just sat down in front of a guy who was a former ASU linebacker. He was a regional manager at the time. And I said, look, man, I don't have the experience here, but I know I can guarantee I can make this work. I played soccer. I know what it takes to wake up at 4 a.m. and grind like no other and work till 10 p.m. I was a collegiate athlete, played a little bit of professional soccer. I know what it takes to make it work, and I think he's just giving me this shot. And I just asked for the favor, and I think no one did that out of his 5 interviews that day. And he was taken back by that. And then afterward, he just gave me the role, and I started that week later. And it was a journey. I mean, I took on a role, and this is the beauty and the not so beautiful part about working for a small company is there isn't that many resources. So you have to go and do the art of figuring it out yourself. So it's a hard knocks MBA getting in there, right? So I started a week later, and I literally got thrown in surgery within like 5 days of barely no training. In the territory, I probably only had like 80,000 of sales in Los Angeles, a very competitive market. And I took that 80,000 and actually dropped it almost to zero because I absolutely butchered my first case. No training whatsoever. It was a complex facial reconstruction surgery, and I'll never forget it to this day. And then that sat with me, resonated that I thought like my career in medical device was going to go to shit the rest of the time. So afterward, I said, I'm going to have to figure this out and understand where is the most leverage I can get from myself in a very saturated competitive space in Los Angeles of craniomaxillofacial. So I just started penetrating just the neurosurgery market very heavily with plates and screws. And I was able to build that up in about 6 months after that, from taking it from 80,000 to zero to like 800,000 in sales. And I had this inflection point at the age of 25 where I was like, you know what? I was offered to go in the distributor route, which is, I didn't really know what that was. I heard of distributors, I guess they were able to carry multiple lines. And I knew at that inflection point, I was like, this is my time to become an entrepreneur. So I just took the leap of faith, never looked back, and then started my distributorship at 25 and then slowly progressed afterward, which I'll probably get into further detail in this conversation.
I feel like that's such a great time to make a decision like that, because at least a lot of the guys who I mentor and girls, they're anywhere between the ages of like 22, 23 to like 26. And then my biggest thing is kind of like, this is the time where you should take like a big, massive risk, because like worst case scenario, like, you get a really cool story, you learn some things over a couple years and you can go get a job. But the other option is like your life changes, and I think there's so many people who, I don't know, do you feel like people when they're in their mid-20s, they feel like they need to just kind of like stay the course and just kind of grind it out at things, even if they don't like it, and not do anything risky? Do you feel like most people are doing that?
100%. You get in this routine where you don't really know where you're going in life because you're in this mundane, ordinary routine every single day. And then it takes some sort of like drastic shift to change your daily habits. And for me, I had this inflection point where I was like, I was working for that 6 to 8 months before I became a distributor, just my head down, and like everything was a blur if I look back at it. I was just waking up at 5, getting the car, going after it. And I had like no business sense. It was just sell, 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 sell. But it wasn't fundamentally about like creating a business until the inflection point happened where I was offered to say I can go and become my own business owner. And then the decision, the real framework where I decided to say yes to this was, I thought about like, what do I want to be when I'm 85? What stories do I want to tell when I'm younger to my grandkids? And I took this big leap of faith and I was able to go start a business at an early age. And then further then I was able to grow that into something much greater than what it is today and tell great stories from that. And I know all the self-development that I was going to get from doing that and all those, big changes I'm going to make in my life are going to be drastically important to my self-development. It's going to allow myself to go through crazy duress, but then that duress is going to translate into probably the best experiences of my life, because I look back at it now, and it was the best decision I ever did, because now I can handle high stress. I can handle things that many people probably can't, because I've gone through those highly audacious tasks to go and make sure that I can accomplish that. And now today I'm, taking on bigger roles in different companies and in my company today as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because like that definitely resonates with me, because I remember when I decided to finally, I was a wantrepreneur for a long time, and I tell people a wantrepreneur is pretty much, which there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but it just means that you're still working a job, a W-2 job, and you're an entrepreneur at nights or on the weekends. You're an entrepreneur. And when I finally decided to do it is when my wife was 3 months pregnant. I had and I told you about this. I had no business. I had no idea. Like the first 6 months of me being in business was me just flying by the seat of my pants, trying to figure out how do I make rent. And I think part of the reason was like, I thought about my son being born, and I was like, what am I going to tell my son 18 years from now that like his dad, I had a chance to try and I was just too afraid to do it because like, oh, bills and health insurance and just like all the reasons you come up with that not to do it. And I was like, no, I don't want to be that guy. And that kind of like motivated me. So it sounds like similar to you is just like, I mean, you don't have any kids, correct? None that you know of, right? But your motivation was just like, fast forwarding into the future and thinking about like, I guess it's like Ray Dalio's, not Ray Dalio, Jeff Bezos. He has a regret minimization framework, which is just like trying to minimize as many regrets as possible. Was that kind of like the impetus for you to kind of start your own distributorship and say, let me just go full force into this?
Yeah, exactly. I knew it. I just wanted to make decisions quickly. Like I didn't want to take a piece of paper, put all the pros and cons on there, rip it up into 4 pieces, and then like analyze each piece of it. I said, I'm going to go with my gut.
You went with your intuition.
100%. I think everyone should take big decisions like that, because the more you tussle back and forth to those decisions, the more doubt you're going to have. But usually your gut is always going to be the right perspective of where you should make it.
I totally agree.
And I think when you're making that decision too, like I was already close to doing $1 million in sales at the time for one company. And it goes back to this framework that I have now is like build to the first million. And then if you're going to build something else, then go build another product to another million. Don't go so laterally and build a hole 10 feet wide and 2 inches deep. Try to build a hole 2 inches wide and 10 feet deep to then allow yourself to have a lot of leverage in what you're doing. So I had an unfair advantage in neurosurgery. So right then and there, I said, okay, let me take my second product line to parlay that into the neurosurgery field. And that's what I did.
Well, so let me ask you this, because you mentioned, when you become a rep, especially early on, like you are very heads down. Like I remember when I started, I was heads down studying inside out so I can just be the like undeniably the best at what I did. What was it that got you to kind of lift your head up and the light bulb kind of go off where you said, you know what? I got a little bit of leverage here. I can move this to an adjacent thing and start my own company. Like what was it that sparked that?
So it was a time restriction perspective where I was not making money unless I was giving my time away during those surgeries. And that was very hard for me because many people, I don't know who's listening on this podcast, but doing things in Los Angeles or New York or San Francisco is very different than doing medical device sales in the Midwest or places that don't have a high amount of traffic.
Can you detail your day real quick just so that people can appreciate how miserable that is?
Yeah, so I mean, 11 miles in Los Angeles can be like an hour and 20 minutes. So if you're trying to maximize leverage, how are you going to get to like 5 different accounts, see 10 doctors in the same day versus like you work in tech sales, you're on the phone, you already met with 40 people in the last 2 hours by just banging out phone calls. And this is the part where I was just dying. My body, I had an unfair advantage of being young at the time. So from like 24 to like 28, I was just grinding completely, even building the distributorship. I had the ability to just really push harder than others because of the physical and mental capacity that I had. But you reach this burnout point, and I was getting to that burnout point at the age of like 27, 28. And that's where I realized, I have to create a lot more leverage in my life and being able to have sales throughout my business or my personal life to happen without me being. And that's when I shifted the model. And, I read Naval's book, The Almanac, probably one of my favorite books to this day. Talks about the 4 different forms of leverage, and labor leverage was the one that really resonated with, because the thing about medical device is to find the right labor leverage and the right person to work for you. It's a certain avatar that's very difficult, that's not talked about enough, because there's not many reps who you can find or people you can hire who can put 30,000 miles on their car, speak to a surgeon in a very egalitarian way, can cover surgeries and understand the OR mannerisms, and then do all that. And on top of that, we probably have to pay them anywhere between like 150 to 180K in California just to make the numbers work. And versus like you open a McDonald's franchise, there's a wide abundance and array of people you can hire at 20, 15 bucks an hour, whatever the California wage is. And you have that pool of targeted people where you can scale a business so much faster. That's the downfall. Again, we sell high ticket items. Like our average order value is anywhere between like $10,000 to $12,000 an order of what we do in the device side versus you're flipping burgers and selling something for $10 an order, right? So pick your poison, but that's probably the biggest challenge in my space today, where labor cost is so high, and these implants and devices have only gone down over this last couple of years. So sorry for my long-winded answer.
No. It's a good point. I think you mentioned Naval. So Naval has this interesting framework around leverage. I think there's like 4 forms of leverage. The first form was like labor. Second one was capital. And then the newest forms, the third and fourth, one is media. The other one is coding. And I guess, for both of you, and I don't know about you, do you know how to code?
I don't know how to code. Not at all. I'm probably very tech savvy.
Yeah, so like me, so like for us, like the idea is like media, and we'll get to it a little bit later around your new company. But tell me a little bit more about leverage, because I think it's one of the more powerful things, which is if you sit down and think about leverage. And by the way, I do got to give a shout out to him. So Eric Jorgensen, who wrote the Almanac Naval, he actually came on my personal podcast, which it's sort of been inactive for a while now, but he came on like a few years ago during the pandemic, actually. And for those who are interested in it, I should actually take it. He actually put together a nice course. It's like $100, I think, on leverage. So if you just search, I think Eric Jorgensen and leverage course will come up. But tell me, like how do you think about leverage? Like, how did you, like when you're in your mid-20s, that's kind of a unique thing to be thinking about, is like, how do you leverage things? How do you think about leverage?
So let me resonate to the audience of how I did it towards medical device. So I first thought about leverage was, can I sell products without me being there? So sales would come in at my own leisure, and there's past that passive income quote unquote term. So leverage for me is basically the measurements of units times velocity equals output. So if I'm able to have a lot of leverage on what I'm selling with the least amount of input I'm able to put myself through, that's a lot of leverage. So when we're covering, let's say, spine surgery, for example, we have to do all these trays and have people cover the case. Those, in my opinion, are actually low leverage. Even though they can pay back high dividends, they're low leverage opportunities because they're so chaotic. There's so many moving pieces to make the deal actually happen. Versus if I have a single-use disposable item that's being sold to an unbiased customer base where no one has any sort of resonance towards me as a relationship to the sale, that's high leverage, and I can multiply that effect. And then that's where my mind started to think about, okay, how do I create more products in this avatar, in this space, in this channel to allow myself to grow passively with a lot of leverage. So I started learning more about leverage when I was around 25, 26. My first investments got heavily into real estate in California, where a lot of people told me not to invest in. I started taking all my dividends and putting it into that and built a real estate portfolio now. So I just wanted to make sure I had all these sources of income coming in outside of just me being there and creating income during the hours that I was working.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioning that. Like, I think, this is the one thing, and one of my more, I think, I know it's a top 10 episode. One of the, so now by the time this episode comes out, we'll be over 90 episodes. One of the more popular episodes I did is one is what you should be doing with your wasted time as a rep, like in between cases. And then the second was how to have side hustles. For a lot of reps, they have a lot of downtime. One of the things I recommend is if you enjoy talking shop, sign up with GuidePoint or Third Bridge or any of these management consulting firms where you can get paid per hour to just do due diligence, on an investor call. But for those who are want to leverage their time a little bit, what are some easy ways for them to start doing that, or at least thinking about it?
I mean, as a rep currently, as a W-2 rep?
Yeah, as a W-2 rep.
For sure. So what I would say is reverse the dream outcome of what you want your life to be first and foremost. And if you're able to reverse the outcome and know what that really looks like, and where the trajectory of your life is going to happen, find what path of a side hustle that's going to be. So for me, it was learning more about real estate. You start hearing that real estate is a great asset to invest in. So for me, I took a lot of due diligence in understanding tax law, because I found that tax laws is like the game of Monopoly. We play this game, for example, when I was a W-2 rep for a short period of time and getting commissioned. The commission and the California tax is actually taxed the most. So I'm like, as a W-2 tax, why am I actually focusing on being a rep as a W-2 when that's commissioned the most? So then I started learning about the different forms of tax law, and I said, okay, if I can start investing in real estate and understanding the dividends of that, that's a better use of my time and high form of leverage from being able to understand that model. So I put a lot of effort in understanding real estate. I highly recommend people understanding real estate because it's probably the only asset class that gives something called a bonus depreciation or cost segregation, meaning that all the depreciation you're doing towards the asset that you're investing in and putting all the renovations towards can go against your active income. That's the highest form of leverage in today's world that's not really talked about. So I took a huge effort into doing that. It's probably been the best investments I've done thus far and allowed me to retain a lot of my wealth. So I think that's one place you can look at. Another thing you do is just invest in education. So if you want leverage, there's Alex Ramosi talks about ignorance debt is invest in something that you want to know more about, because what you don't know is costing you a lot of money today. So any sort of education that you are unbeknownst to, I would highly invest into that. And a lot of it is a school of hard knocks. In the sense I say that is you don't need to go spend thousands of dollars on some course. A lot of it is free education you can get on YouTube, listen to someone like yourself. There's so much abundance.
Completely agree.
Yeah, there's
completely agree
of information out there.
And look, I'll because it's a sensitive topic for me. Well, it's not sensitive. There's so many reps who complain and moan all the time about I want to make more money and everything. I'm like, oh, what are you doing about it? So granted, I have my own courses and communities. They don't have to do that. There's a lot, man. The first thing I always ask reps when they're I want to get better at selling everything. I'm like, well, have you listened to how many episodes of my podcast you listen to? Oh, a couple. It's well, have you listened to other podcasts? No, it's this and that and the other. There's another rep who was who sent me a message hey man, Alex Ramosi just gave away the whole playbook for free and blah blah blah. And I was yeah. I was So did you go through it? Have you read it? And then he's like, no, I haven't. I'm like, did you read $100 million offers, which has been out for, a couple years now? He's like, no, I haven't done any of that. I'm like, so what are you talking about, man? I think this, like, in today's age, between the internet, YouTube, and chat GPT, there's just like, there's no reason not to be ignorant about anything, there's no reason
Yeah,
at all.
it goes back to Jamal's saying of like permissionless leverage. Like those are the two forms now that where there's these creators out there who are creating permissionless leverage for themselves. They don't have to ask anyone to go create content. They don't have to ask anyone to put a post out there and monetize that, which is a new era that we're really going through right now. And I think understanding the trends of different monetization structures as a current W2 rep and how to monetize that in the best way possible is just learning where the trends are going. So like there's a huge effect of people being able to make content to create a monetization structure through their business. If you're able to put time into understanding how to do that, there's huge value in doing so. A lot of time and effort, but there's, you're obviously making great case out of that to being able to put high quality content out there, and it's serving you as a great business for you. So that's another form of leverage that people just aren't taking huge consideration into.
I think, yeah, and I think one of the other things, like just for reps, like, I've kind of, I mean, it took me moving to Silicon Valley to realize this was, actually, no, I lied. It was before then. But just getting plugged into the entrepreneurial community, I kind of realized I'm like, I'm a W-2 employee, but like I should just use LegalZoom and set up my own LLC. And even if I go like negative in it, I can write everything off through it. So a lot of my early education, coursework, coaching that I got, I just started LLC, and then it was not profitable first couple of years, but I got a great return back, because I was like putting everything through there, and that didn't take I didn't have to pay thousands of dollars for a course. I literally just was curious, and I looked up on YouTube, and somebody talked about it, and I was like, oh, like, yeah, why am I not writing things off through a business entity?
100%. If you read the tax laws and going back to this, there's such good advantage of understanding how the game is played, because the game of entrepreneurship is purely just a game. And there's rules written out there that allow us, if we read the rules, the game can be a lot easier. Just 99% of us don't read the rules of how the game is played. So when I started transitioning from being a W-2 to an entrepreneur and running the distributorship and then the manufacturing part of our business, there were such huge benefits of understanding all the tax laws that really started advancing my mindset of like, okay, now I can start developing other businesses because I know the tax laws very well. And that has really scaled like my way of looking at business today.
Yeah, no, I know 100%. And I think, I love reps. I like in this industry, I really love reps just because it's a hard job. And then unlike I don't know, tech sales or anything else, we're selling something that's going to have like a tremendous impact on somebody's life. Right. And it is a hard, I challenge anybody, find me a harder sales job than being a medical device rep. But a lot of times I feel like reps don't want to help themselves out, and they get really lazy. Like they almost put, somebody told me this when I started my career, which is your career growth is not your manager's responsibility. And the moment that I accepted that, because I started as a rep and I kind of expected like my company would invest in me or like my manager will do this and that. And the day that I accepted the fact that like, you know what, nobody cares. Nobody cares whether, if you're doing a great job, nobody's going to wake up and say, oh, we should pay Sam Mahmood a little bit more money. He's doing a great job. Like, nobody's going to do that, and it's kind of like at the end, if you don't like this, this is another hard truth. Actually, there's a few people who like were very early into my program, and they said like this, like one ad, like supposedly struck a tone with a lot of people, which is if you don't like the numbers that are in your bank account, if you don't like the life you're looking at right now, the only person to blame is yourself. That's it.
For sure. If I was going back, if I was a rep today, the most important thing I would focus on like helping my career growth the most is just understanding how well you can get at allowing physicians to say yes to you. And I say this with great context in the sense that if you can get someone, a physician, to say yes to you, to use your product on their patient and do that over and over again, imagine what you can do with a higher leverage opportunity. Imagine you start raising money. Imagine you start
in a less regulated area.
Yeah, or investment banking. And you start having bigger people that write bigger checks to say yes to you. So the most important thing, and if you can get physicians to say yes to you, like heart surgeons, neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, these guys are very critical. They look at your product, they have so many questions. If you can combat all those things and allow them to say, I want to use this, and you convince me to do so, you should pat yourself on the back, because that's not an easy thing to do in today's world. Like, you're not selling a car, you're not selling jackets whatsoever. You're selling a clinical product that's going to be used in someone's life. Like, I saw over 1,000 brain surgeries where I actually put new product that had just been released to allow brain surgeons to use their product. And I was like on the forefront of that aspect with these smaller mid-cap companies that I was working with. A much tougher sale. Like, I never got to work for Stryker or Zimmer or big companies. A lot of my experience was working with very small mid-cap companies. So my sales game had to be much more on point, because I wasn't given the keys to the contracts at all. I wasn't giving access to all these surgeons. I had to go try 3 or 4 times harder than most people, because I had to first convince a surgeon to try a product he probably never heard of, and then he had to go ask for it to go get a contract. Those two components, and then fulfilling that whole cycle, I mean, it came out with a bigger dividend than working for a bigger company. But if you can do that right now at a younger age, I highly recommend just focus on doctors saying yes to you with whatever you're selling, and just multiply that effect as much as possible.
I think that was so well said, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. And again, like, this is the part where I talk to reps. I'm like, what you do is really hard, because again, look, I actually went to medical school, and it's still hard because you're dealing with I don't think there's another industry where you're dealing with a customer who's so much smarter than you at what is being solved. Like, I could go work for a software company and sell to like a Fortune 100 CTO or CMO or whatever I'm selling to. And in some way I can kind of understand and relate to them and be able to, but selling a product to a surgeon, like like that, nothing's more difficult. And you have a great point there, which is like, if you're able to engineer and figure out how to get somebody to commit and say yes and change their behavior, that lesson and learning can be applied in so many places. And again, I love the way you put it, which is like, figure out how do I apply that in other places where the checks are bigger.
100%.
Something I want to dive in a little bit into the story, because like, this is where and I'm going to blame you, by the way, because like, you're a very, very humble guy, and so you don't do yourself enough credit for how remarkable your story is. But one of the first things that like caught my attention when you and I first met and we talked was, you're a distributor, but you identified a need in the market and then went overseas to manufacture your own medical device, got it approved, and started selling it, which, 20, 30, 40 years ago, that's how a lot of distributors started. But 20, 30, 40 years ago, the game was different. Look, 20 years ago, I was able to walk into my dad's hospital he practiced at, go to the OR, wave to the front desk, be like, hey, I'm Dr. Khateeb's son, 14 years old. I'm just going to go put some scrubs on. I'm going to go hang out in the OR. Oh, yeah, no problem. This is a different game back then, but you did this just a few years ago. So tell me about the product Surgical Republic like started manufacturing. Like, how did you identify it? Like, I want to hear this whole story.
For sure. So we got pretty heavy in selling a lot of spine implants. That started to grow a lot in our distributorship part of our business. And then as we started to grow, consolidation started happening in these hospitals where they started limiting these vendors. And, it went from like 15 vendors to 10 vendors. And again, I've always carried smaller mid-cap companies. I never carried the Medtronics of the world, the Zimmers of the world. So as I started getting blocked out of hospitals, doctors have been losing a lot of leverage in today's world of allowing what's being used in their surgeries now too. They're being told what to use. So then, I was actually in a Kaiser account where I was down in sterile processing. And I looked at this guy and he's like, oh, we change out these keratins every 3 months. And I was like, every 3 months? Like, how many do you change out? He's like, around like 30 different keratins every 3 months. And I saw that as an opportunity right from the get-go. Like, I had this blink of a light bulb moment. And I said, why? He's like, all the keratins that we have just get dull so fast. And then I've been in a ton of spine surgeries where the one complaint of every spine surgery is every keratin sucks. So I took that as an opportunity and I said, okay, well, let me just focus on making the best keratin ronger out there. So I randomly was like one day on a weekend, it was a random Sunday, just started looking up, keratin manufacturing companies, all in Germany. And I finally got in contact with a couple of them and told them, hey, I'm coming out next week. And they're like, are you set up as a vendor in the FDA? I'm like, no, not yet, but I want to come out and see this operation. I want to just learn this stuff. So I took a flight out to Tübingen, Germany, met with like 7 different OEM manufacturers over there. And I saw different product lines outside of keratins, but I had a huge focus on just mastering one channel, one avatar, one focal point, which was spine and neurosurgery. So then I said, I want to create my keratin to do this X, Y, Z, because I just took feedback from what all the neuro and orthopedic surgeons were saying. Well, everyone at SPD was saying that this is what's happening with their keratins. So then I said, okay, the only way my small company, Surgical Republic, is going to get in is the second they feel this keratin, they better know that this is like the best thing they've ever used. And I'm going to charge a damn premium for it because it's the only way it's going to allow me to have scale and margin to do so. So today I probably have like one of the most expensive keratins in the market. We've sold over 1,000 thus far. Just in 2023, we've done like, I think over 800 keratins thus far, which is pretty good for a smaller company like myself. But I just added features to it and made it the Ferrari of keratins in the sense that like I put a silicone grip on them. They're fully ceramic coated. They have a side ejector. They don't get dull so fast. And doctors notice that. So I just realized like if you just pay attention to little details, and like I think the true wealth in life is the amount of attention you give to people. Because if I just didn't pick up those little things when I'm hearing that from surgeons, hearing that from SPD, and all I was thinking about was like, how do I move more implants? I would have missed out on this opportunity of starting this manufacturing arm for my business today, which has been the most highest leverage that's probably happened to me thus far. Because instead of me serving just Los Angeles, driving around Los Angeles with all this traffic, we service like 28 states now. We ship stuff all over different distributors. It's been a huge journey thus far, and now we've expanded much further than just keratins. We have other instrument lines. We do sterilization containers, and it's not a sexy model at all. Let me tell you, we run no ads, nothing. It's all through word of mouth. It's all through connecting with different doctors. And it's been a crazy journey by just getting a product FDA approved, getting my company FDA approved to now sell all these products nationwide. So it's just in around a 5-year or 4-year period, it was becoming a W-2 rep to just a distributor to then now a full-blown company that is vertically integrated in billing hospitals.
That's amazing. And what's more remarkable, because like I come from the world of like high-tech capital equipment, usually first of its kind technology, usually stuff that's like really expensive, no reimbursement code, and doesn't even have a market. You decided to sell a commodity product, but at a premium, which I love. My biggest thing is like, if you're going to sell something, make a really like high quality product and charge a lot for it. How were you able to find your first adopters for that? And then how did you work with them to convince the hospital to buy this,
Yeah, so it goes back to this specific Kaiser account that said, if you bring me this type of keratin, and if you say it performs the way you think it will perform, we will convert everything over to you. So I just had this opportunity. I had like one task to focus on, Omar, right? And if you take that one task and put all your focus on it, and I look at this mindset as similar to my days in soccer. So a lot of us as reps or in our business, and I'll loop this all back around, we're operating sometimes at like 60 to 65% throughout the whole day. Meaning we're just doing our work. We're kind of in this mundane world. But in soccer, if you realize, like if you watch Leo Messi or Ronaldo, the best players, it's actually they're working in sprints. And when I say that is like you're working in intervals of like 15% is just a slow jog, 85% you're like fully sprinting. And that's how I take my business mindset as well now. So I said, okay, I have this sprint I have to do right now, and I have a short window to prove this before someone else takes this opportunity. So I better make it right. So I went to Germany, got this product that I think was the cat's meow, let them do this big trial. This Kaiser account had 14 neurosurgeons. I had 14 neurosurgeons say, this is the best thing I've ever used. I want to continue only using this. So that account gave me the multiplication effect to get a Kaiser contract. And then, from then on, we started selling a lot of keratins within that GPO. And then that got word of mouth to other contracts, other distributors. And now we sell a ton of these.
That's pretty impressive, man. And I think like it shows, I like that analogy too about soccer. Cause I feel like the one thing I've kind of realized, especially like as an entrepreneur, is just like, if you're a W-2 employee, then like that's just kind of the nature of the game, which is like you're a cog in a machine, whether it's a startup or a large company. You just kind of like sit and just repeat the same task over and over again. In entrepreneurship, there are some like revenue-driven actions. And I think that's like, I'm sure you experience that like at some point there are very specific, you try and delegate everything and you get to a point where there's revenue-driven actions that you just repeat on a daily basis. And like your days are pretty boring. But then from time to time, there are certain opportunities where you just focus on sprinting and getting something done and shipped, right? And figuring out what those things are is kind of like, that's kind of like the skill set that you try and decide like where you should be really spending your time. Would you agree with that?
100%. And I think the biggest difference between the entrepreneurship route and then just the regular W2 route is understanding if you're willing to sacrifice the lack of uncertainty throughout your journey and you're okay with going through that distress from internal not knowing what's going to happen next is definitely the biggest difference between the two, because I know every step I take now is like a chess move. And is that chess move going to pull the lever down a lot more than the last lever that I just pushed? And sometimes those are the wrong chess moves. Sometimes they are the correct chess moves. But the fact that I am actually doing the doing of pulling that lever and actually making progression and bigger, audacious, decision making in my life, because as an entrepreneur, I think the biggest thing we would focus on is just the level of decision making. The decision making of someone who works at McDonald's and decision making that I do today, they're both decisions, but the level of extremity of those decisions today are just a little bit different. Mine maybe serves to a little bit hierarchy than someone working at McDonald's. But in our lives, like, we just want to make sure we're making high quality decisions to get us ahead in life. And I think now, I focus on just high points of leverage to make sure that I'm doing a little bit less for more at everything that I'm doing. And it's been just a huge way of just looking at perspective of life to make sure I'm building the life that I want to build. I'm not like the life of driving around Los Angeles every single day, being in traffic. It's very hard to sustain that model. And I think it's very hard for many medical device reps to just go in the OR as a trauma rep or as any sort of device rep and just serve to your cell phone all the time, because that distress has caused us just to not have overall high quality of life because, we're so connected to these cell phones now. And this is why I kind of started my second company, is because, I had a lack of distress in my life. To build this type of entity that I built now, I had to sacrifice my body, my overall health to make sure, I can sustain, living in California in a comfortable way and make sure I'm growing my business in the right trajectory. And that came with like a ton of, lack of health, lack of sleep, lack of a lot of things. And then now I learned these forms of leverage that really allowed me to scale my life, my business in ways where I never thought I would if I didn't make those big decisions.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because like I guess like I've always been into like biohacking and optimizing my health for a while, but like for some reason something about being in California, specifically SoCal, you get even more exposure to it. And just this weekend I was at a close friend's home who, let's just say, like, he's an investor, owns a hedge fund, so like you can imagine like the other people in this party were like, balling out of control. Let's just put it that way. But a lot of them, like, really wreck their health on the way there. And for me, like, I really believe you can attain the kind of financial foundation you want, the level of wealth that you want, the business that you want, but you don't have to wreck your health on the way there. Do you feel like, I feel like that's something that it's almost like a screwed up badge of honor that people have, like something that's really dumb that I've noticed, like especially in medicine, is this like fact that people brag about how little sleep that they got and how they're able to function. And I'm like, it's like the dumbest thing. It's like you don't hear somebody bragging like, man, I got so drunk last night, but I still drove home. Like you would, but it's almost like the equivalent thing of people saying like, man, I only need like 4 hours of sleep a night. And it's just such nonsense. Like, it's pseudoscience, actually.
It is. And the saddest part about it, and you will resonate with this, is how many physicians or surgeons at the age of 60 look like they're 60 today. And I say that, and I digress because I sympathize for them. I know a lot of them, like, let's say in neurosurgery, you're going through, 8 years of residency plus a fellowship. You're on minimal sleep. You're under a high amount of duress every single day. And to be honest, like, you're not getting paid for what you're worth anymore. Like, a brain aneurysm is paying you $1,100 at night to clip someone's aneurysm out, and to only make that much money in today's environment just doesn't even correlate the monetization of what that sacrifice really comes down to, of what you're doing for patients' lives, and then what that's doing to harming your actual internal body today. And I know I can't relate to that from a brain surgeon perspective, but even on our side as a device rep, when I was running around, servicing these physicians, it killed my body. It killed all our reps' body, and it kills reps today of how difficult this job can be. It's physical and enduring. It's not the luxury lifestyle that many like tech sales reps have, to be at home at the leisure and Everybody's working remote these days.
Bro, tech sales is a joke, man. I make fun of those guys all the like. Not just like. Can we take a moment? Can I talk some shit about tech sales? Let me just talk a little smack about tech sales. Again, like aside from the fact that they all work from home. Okay, on top of it, they don't own the full sales cycle. They got like an SDR, BDR who's doing the prospecting and outreach. Then the AE gets on to do the demo. Most of the time, the AE doesn't do the full demo. They do like a somewhat of a demo, and then they have to have a sales engineer, which is a fancy of saying an engineer who knows how to sell, come on to do the more technical side of the demo. And then, there might be even like some closing members who help close it, like customer success and everything. Versus in devices. And by the way, that's once this product is sold and everything, the AE has nothing to do with implementation, none of that. For med devices, it's like you got to prospect, you got to close the deals, you got to demo and everything, and meantime you got your customer success because you're supporting these cases. Like like tech sales is kind of a joke. That being said, on the like hard life of a rep, we're not even mentioning, by the way, because again, I'm a startup guy, so a lot of people who are at Striker and Track, they have a territory and they just stay and work within there. The people who work for startups are living out of a suitcase 4 or 5 days out of the week, and so like. When you're on travel, you don't eat very well. You definitely probably have like, a drink or so here and there because it's just part of the culture. All these things just destroy sleep. And I think you can, and I was talking to Dr. Jacob, Paul Jacob, who is an orthopedic surgeon, you have to be able to function sometimes without sleep. Like it's just part of the gig. It's what you're signing up for. And it's a hard part to say. It's like either you do that or you extend residency in terms of the amount of years that you want to do. And nobody wants to do that. But I think that there's certain sleep hygiene you can have to just optimize to make sure that if you get only, let's say you're in bed for 6 or 7 hours a night, you're getting like really as optimal sleep as possible. And I think there's a lot of people who get 9 hours of sleep a night, but because they have terrible sleep hygiene, they might as well just be sleeping 4 hours a night,
100%. And I struggle with that completely, man. Like I lacked sleep for years. I think from 24 to 28, I was averaging around 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And I had the age advantage on my side, which now today I'm 31. I'm still pretty young. But I take like my health probably the most important part of my life today, more than anything, more than chasing any sort of monetary goals, because it's the only thing we can really control. And unfortunately, I've seen people and family, friends who've died early. And, a lot of it came down to just not taking care of their health. So if that's the one indicative that I can control today, I'm going to make that a precedent in my life. So I had decided to create a company around quality health and quality sleep because it was my own deficit. And then that's why I created the MouthTape company.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. So the company's called Better MouthTape, BETER. So so let me tell you about it from my perspective, which is, you're selling devices, right? An expensive high-end product. So do you mind if I ask like your Kerisons, like roughly what you sell them for?
Yeah.
And if you don't want to disclose that, you feel free to say no.
It's over $1,200 a piece. So
okay, so $1,200. You go from that to starting a company where you're selling a product that a pack of 30 of your mouth tape costs how much?
Around
roughly?
Basis like $21.
20. Okay, exactly. So like you got to sell a lot of mouth tape, right? So what was the motivation to start this company, and like is it just mouth tape that you're focused on? I mean, we've had long discussions about this, but tell us about how this all started. And then I definitely want to talk, we need to talk about some sleep science,
Yeah, for sure. So the why obviously came from my own deficit, and then I started MouthTaping like a year ago. I saw a lot of the brands out there I just didn't resonate with. So I was trying every single brand out there, didn't like any of the brands, didn't like the design of some of the mouth tapes out there. I knew the science behind it after, reading the book Breath by James Nestor. And I didn't want this big piece of tape on top of my mouth. I wanted just an anchoring device because the whole point of mouth taping is just put yourself in proper occlusion, which is like maxilla, mandible coming together at night to enhance that nasal breathing. So then I said,
Can you dive a little bit real quick? Why is that important about, jaw alignment and keeping your mouth closed and nasal breathing? Why is that so important?
The biggest thing is when you are mouth breathing at night or even during the day, you are weakening the throat muscles, which then causes you facial dysphagia. So I had the unfair advantage of seeing like 1,000 of these like facial jaw reconstructive surgeries where we sold all these plates and screws for. And I would ask these doctors, like, why are they doing the surgery? Like, why do they have a recessed jawline? A lot of it can be hereditary. A lot of it can be from their adolescent times of growing up. of poor malnutrition and this, or genetics, but a lot of it actually happens through mouth breathing. And that's not talked about enough. And even during my time of like years in medical device, like to this day, not many people talk about the negative side effects of mouth breathing. So I learned, I was like, wow, like this is a huge, like monumental moment and inflection point of talking a little bit more about mouth breathing and then how to enhance that through sleep. And like, what are all the benefits and negligence that come with mouth breathing? So that's the biggest reason is like, we want to make sure our jawline is strong. Everybody's out there trying to get facial plastic surgery in the correct way of having aesthetics correctly. So you want to make sure you're nasally breathing because that's delivering oxygen to your brain as well. So if you're actually mouth breathing, you're losing like over 50% of nitric oxide developed in your body, which nitric oxide is like all the VO2, the energy you're getting, how obviously as a male, those are very important things just because, you know, if you look at what Viagra is made of, it's purely nitric oxide to make sure you're sexually functionable. But these things are very, very impactful to overall health. So I said, if you can solve that organically through mouth taping rather than taking some sort of external drug out there should be a lot more education on this, and people will be using this as toothpaste every night when they go to bed.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that because so it's, same with you. Like I got into mouth taping. I saw like most people a trend on social media, and then I started off with I won't mention the company name, but like it's a good company, but their mouth tape like covers your entire mouth. But there are two problems with that I didn't like. One is, it's just more adhesive on your mouth. And like for me, I'm like, whatever. A lot of you had mentioned to me that on Amazon, a lot of mouth tape companies got shut down because they're using like screwed up. This is the other thing, by the way, is like I felt comfortable buying the product because you're a device guy. And so you've been through the FDA and everything. So like, what it takes to manufacture like a good quality product. The other side of it though is what people, so for me, I unfortunately I'm a light sleeper, so I have to do all kinds of crazy things at night to make sure I fall asleep. Well, if you have like I take magnesium gives you some wild dreams, and sometimes when you're dreaming you have to like at some point breathe through your mouth. If you got your whole mouth taped, you wake up like panicking, like it's very abrupt. And actually I remember this Dave Asprey was he's the one who got me into mouth taping, but he just tapes like he puts a square right over his lips, and he's like, that way you can breathe through the side of the mouth. And I was always wondering, like, well, you don't want to breathe through your mouth. Why would you do that? Well, it's because if you dream at night and you're having some kind of wild dream, you can't breathe. You're going to wake up like panicked,
Exactly.
So
like you still do want lateral access, which when I say lateral, like on the side of your mouth to be able to breathe if you need to breathe, because it's intimidating mouth taping. If you haven't mouth taped before, it can look provocative. It looks scary at first. So the key aspect here is like we want to create a design that is the most minimal amount of effort on your part for the most maximum result that you're getting for it. And that's why we created this kind of reverse H-shaped design that just anchors to the top part of your lip and the bottom part of your lip. And then going back to your first question, like why did I decide to create the company? Why am I selling thousands of dollars of medical devices to a $21 product? Is because it reaches a much bigger total addressable market. So just in under 3 months, we've acquired just 1,000 customers thus far, minimal ad spend. I've shipped to 18 different countries. Almost all, I would say about 950 of those customers don't know who I am. So it's an unbiased customer base, which I think the quality of your business, if you were ever to be acquired or IPO'd, is based off of your customer base rather than the relationships that you have. Unfortunately, unlike the medical device space,
or like likeness of image and brand, right?
100%. But the customer base is probably the most important thing they look at during some sort of acquisition if you're willing to sell. Because unlike my medical device company, let's say a lot of it can be a very relationship capital. Like many people don't want to buy the business because these surgeons are tied to me in the relationship capital that I've built. First, if I build a product on a subscription basis, let's say at $20 a month, the cost of acquisition, let's say, is $8 to acquire someone for the lifetime value of a $240 order times 12, and you do a multiplication effect of 10,000 customers, you have a $2 million plus business with very high leverage. So I said, if I can focus on that type of model, and hopefully we're going to come out with 1 or 2 products here soon, where it's a sleep kit, just for $1 a day, you're sleeping better, and you're getting this cool orange box with 1 or 2 products every month as a subscription model. And if we can do that, I think we'll change the way, how easy it is to have proper sleep, and then how you're going to feel the next day. The reason why we call it Better Mouth Tape is because we're focusing on the prospect of who the customer wants to be. And to me, that's always about becoming better. So if we can make our mission or premise about becoming better from the get-go, and make sleep as a lubrication to get there, I know we have a business model and we have a mission where people will follow us, and we will be a successful company in the near.
Nice. Nice. And so just a quick side note I want to mention is like for the reps who are listening, there's so many opportunities for you to learn. And again, just like there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. For me, when I left medical school and started off in this business, I knew that I would start my own company one day. I just didn't know when or how. And so I saw my W-2 days as like, this is my undergrad. And so however I could. So for example, customer acquisition costs, lifetime value, all these metrics that you see in e-commerce or just startups, like you should learn them and then try and figure out how do you apply it. For me, when I was a rep, I couldn't technically figure out customer acquisition costs because I didn't have a marketing budget back then. But then I kind of like played around. I'm like, okay, like what if like if my salary is this much, I'm getting paid this much, and then I spend this much, like an hour a day driving around trying to find, like, then you can figure out like your hourly pay, and you're like, okay, if I spend 5 hours this week, that's so you can get more creative about this. My point is that a lot of things that Sam just said, if you don't understand it, like I would recommend like be a student of the game and go look this stuff up and learn. Like the one thing, sorry, and I'll get down from my soapbox, but it's just I really want reps to, if they want to make more money and they want opportunities, then it's all in front of them. It's like right there. Like, nobody's stopping you from doing this. But the one thing I'll say is like my great late mentor, Chris Sells, who everybody knows because I always mention him on this podcast and stuff. One of the best pieces of advice he told me before he passed was like, be a student of the game. Right. And Sam, to your point, like you mentioned, like this game of entrepreneur, it's all game. Once you know the rules of the game, the definitions and everything, you can optimize it to your advantage and make more money,
Yeah. If you ever read the book, Who Not How, again, probably one of the best books I've read in my life, because you can't know everything. Like, let me tell you, when it came to e-commerce and learning this whole new e-commerce game, like my background is I know how to sell and I know how to invest. Those are probably my two strong points in the business realm. But I'm not a marketer whatsoever. I'm actually a poor content creator. This is not my forte whatsoever. So it was more of a who game. It wasn't like how I was going to do it. It was like who's going to help me get there. So I brought in an advisor who's like my new CMO, CTO, who sold a company that's also a medical device. It was a plantar fascia. He sold a plantar fascia sock for 8 figures, and now he's joined on because he loves what I'm doing over here. It fits in the same avatar. What he did was, a plantar fascia sock is still considered a medical device. He sold a podiatrist. We're engaging with ENT and oral surgeons and dentists, and then it's still a direct to consumer model. So like that whole fit made sense because I'm bringing an expert in a space who understands the areas that I am not wary to. Like I'm a product guy. I know how to sell the product one-to-one, but putting velocity behind it with a marketing component is a completely different animal. So if I was a rep today and you want to start a company and you use the who not how model, I would allocate like a couple $100 out of your check every single month, and who is going to help you solve the unknown that you're looking for. And if you're able to utilize that, there's ways you can pay people hourly rate. You can buy courses. You can buy different various forms of education to go talk to people in areas that you're not an expert at. And if you can use this model, you can grow in any realm that you want to do. So I would just use that as advice for anyone else listening.
Yeah, and again, like me, at least the way that I am, I feel like there's a better value. You have to look for it, by the way, because I'll be honest, there's a lot of people who sell, there's a saying like there's some books that really just should have been a blog, right? And for me, there's a lot of courses, paid courses that really should have just been a YouTube video. So you got to look out for that. But I gained a lot of value the moment I paid for stuff, whether it was like to get access to somebody, take a course, or even I think what's been very valuable for me is getting like coaching from somebody to like understand like things of to shortcut my time. But again, like to your point, for a lot of the young reps who are listening, don't go buy anything. Just go and search on YouTube. There are people who, I mean, like kind of random, but like Martin Shkreli, who was on the show a while back, he was, everybody knows him as Pharma Bro. The guy is like brilliant, very, very sharp when it comes to coding and investing and everything. And on his YouTube channel, he has like, what was it? He had like an hour and a half long YouTube where he literally has a screen share of an Excel spreadsheet, and he talks about how do you make a decision, whether it's a good financial decision, whether to buy or rent. Like, so there's just a wealth of information. There's just like no excuse really. And for the reps, I'm going to handle an objection. Reps who are like, oh, but Omar, I don't have time. Like, I guarantee you, if I get your iPhone and I look at your screen time, I guarantee you I'll find time every week. Like, hands down. Look, Sam, when you were a rep, you had a lot of, you were busy as hell, especially in LA. A rep in LA or in major cities. So where did you find the time to study this stuff and figure it out? Did you do it on the weekends, night times? Like, where did you find that extra time?
Yeah, it's definitely weekends. And as you start connecting, the beautiful part about the medical device world is you're connecting with high net worth individuals. So you start finding out what their hobbies are, whether it's golf, whether it's investing. And I actually connected with a doctor who invested in a lot of REITs, which is like publicly traded real estate investment trust. So I was curious about the real estate investing side, and that was going to be my way of creating more wealth for myself. And once I took the time on the weekends and just sat down and understand like how do I buy my first place? Like I was 25 when I bought my first place, and I did a very unconventional route, which is, in my opinion, to this day, is one of the best investments we've done. It was like I FHA'd a fourplex, which if people don't know that, like your FHA is your first home that you can buy with the most amount of leverage. I mean, you can use 3 to 10%.
And you don't have to put a lot of down payment. You can put like 5% down, right?
Yeah. So, I put that down in a fourplex and sacrificed, living in a fourplex, probably in an area that I didn't want to live for a long time, but you don't have to live there for longer than a year. But you get
you weren't married with kids, like you're a single dude, so it's just like whatever.
Yeah. So like
you know what that beats? It beats living in an apartment in Brooklyn with like 4 other people.
100%. So especially with like the beauty about like California, New York, and Boston, you have crazy inflation, and during inflation, the one thing that you want is assets, because assets grow with inflation. So I knew that as like things were getting more expensive, because we're in the highest tax state here in California, and I wanted to make sure like I was moving with the trajectory, with the pendulum. So when I started taking time on the weekends to learn about real estate, I finally just pulled the trigger on one property and then started buying more and more. And today we have a pretty large portfolio just in Southern California of all mainly multifamily. And the beauty part about this, that everything circles back to medical device, is I went from like doing a lot of more long-term tenants to now a lot more mid-term tenants, where I actually went to the hospitals we as a company do business at and asked where they're getting their traveling nurses from. Give me the corporate agencies that were doing that. The corporate agencies and I had multiple phone calls with these guys. And
are you Airbnb-ing to traveling nurses?
So midterm renting and Airbnb. So Airbnb, you can't do.
I love it. Can you define midterm renting? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's 30 days or more. And it's a much better model than Airbnb because it's permissionless. You don't have to ask the city to give you a permit for that. You don't have to ask anyone. And there's different forms of way of doing and getting midterm rentals through corporate housing, insurance claims. Every 3 seconds there's a flood in America, so there's always someone needed a new place. And then traveling nurses, there's construction workers, so many different variants that you can find someone sustaining units. And it changes the cap rate, which is cap rate, again, a little food for thought, is the net operating income divided by the purchase price, which is what real estate is valued at. And if you're able to escalate that by higher rent rolls, you now change the value of your property a lot more than the fourplex or the fiveplex next door to you. So I knew if I can get creative by using my unfair advantage to work with traveling nurses, and I had to develop relationships with them in the hospitals too, and they live in my units, it was a win-win right from the get-go. So, now we have a pretty large portfolio in the Inland Empire to Orange County, where a lot of the people staying in my units are people I actually know. So then it takes away the variable of like people not paying your rent as well, because these people are not going to screw you. So it's been an awesome experience.
Yeah, just for people who know, this is the tough part of real estate investing, is that when it's commercial real estate and somebody doesn't pay rent, padlock it the next day, no problem. But when it comes to residential, man, you can have somebody just squatting for months as you're waiting out in court, and you're just eating it in the mortgage. And California is not friendly about that at all, unfortunately. So that's actually brilliant.
Yeah, that's the way it made it work, where 90% of people say like, oh, I would never invest in California, but I love doing it because I changed the model in doing so. So we want to continue to scale this way. A lot of physicians have taken note in this, and there might be maybe a fund or some sort of syndication we might do in the future in regard to this midterm model.
Not to get, I want to stay on the path of like the entrepreneurship and the tips and everything, and definitely we gotta have you back. But I'm wondering what your thought is, because I don't know if this is just like a false. I saw this earlier, but I haven't dug into it. Is it true that like State Farm has pulled out completely out of the state of California? And if that's true, like in terms of like insuring, providing home insurance, if that's true, like what do you think that's indicative of? Because if there's one entity or two entities that they know everything about what's going on in the world, it's like banks and insurance companies. So what do you think that means?
So the insurance premiums have gone up drastically for multi-unit residentials because they think that people are going to default in the next year or two. So that's a big reason why State Farm has rejected a lot of people's claims. And there's actually one of mine as well. I had to go find a different insurance company to go on one of my 5 units. It's very difficult to understand like where the trajectory of where real estate's going and where insurance is going. But the fact that insurance companies are backing out of insuring multifamily units or even single family units is a indication of where maybe the real estate market might be going. So it's to be determined thus far.
Where do you think it's going?
I don't think there's a crash at all, to be honest. I think so. Just a food for thought. 35% of America don't have a mortgage right now. 45% of America are sub 4%. 65% of America, I think, are sub 5%. So when everyone has,
what does that mean, sub 4 and sub 5%?
Interest rate on their house. So in 2020, like rates are at 2.7, 2.2. Everyone refinanced and has a ton of cash sitting on that, so no one's bleeding. And we had this high amount of appreciation of all our assets too. So in combination of the refinance in conjunction with all the appreciation that's happened, no one's like forcing to give their home away. The one avatar, if anyone wants to buy real estate today, that I would focus on is the W-2 employee who bought a house, who maybe lost their job in the last 2 years, and then now has negative equity on their place, is probably the best person to probably pick something up at a discount.
Interesting. And is that mainly because of the fact that they have that W-2 income and they get approved for like a really good mortgage?
So they probably did an FHA loan, and then they lost their job, so they can't afford that mortgage anymore. And they also, if they bought in the last 2 years or last 18 months, they haven't seen a lot of appreciation because we've been in this halt period for growth within the real estate market. So those are the ones who are probably defaulting right now if they can't afford that mortgage, which means there's opportunity to take that at a discount.
Got it. Interesting. It's good to know too. We'll talk more, but like, me and my wife are actually probably going to be buying a place sometime before next May. We really like it here a lot. But yeah, it's interesting because I own a house in Florida, and so like Florida's been a wreck because like there's so many insurance companies that are just like shut down. They're like like my home insurance company like changed and been acquired like I don't know like 3 or 4 times. So it's
do it too. I had my mortgage company sell my mortgage off to a different bank. You have to set that whole process up. It's kind of a crazy world, but the banking system knows everything before we do, right? So you just have to stay on top of that.
Yeah, this is one of those heuristics of like how the world really works. So it's like science, medicine, trends, all these things. All that comes from a bank, and I think a lot of what you see in society today is kind of dictated by how much insurance companies are willing to like allow and put up with it. You know what I mean? Because at some point, if the insurance companies and banks are not going to put up with it or bankroll it, it's just going to end.
Speaking of that, like if we switch insurance to our realm of the world of medical device, this is where I foresee the medical space, and it's unfortunate, but I think this is my prediction. And after speaking with several surgeons about this, it's unfortunate how these reimbursements to surgeons are continuously going down. Like a cabbage is around $2,200, as a heart surgery. Brain tumor is around $2,000. These things you should be around like $8,000 to $10,000, maybe like 7 years ago.
And can I just add something? I don't want to add insult to injury, but just like to really hit this home for people. Okay, so a surgeon, you said they go do a cabbage. The surgeon is going to get paid $2,200 for that, right? How long does a cabbage procedure take? Like an hour and a half?
No.
Okay.
Like 4 or 5 hours.
Okay, right. All right, so 4 or 5 hours. And then that's not to also count for the fact that they have this period of like, is it like 60 days afterwards that the patient can't get readmitted? There's all this risk involved, right? They get paid $2,200. Yep. Meanwhile, I sell like at the peak of it last year, my course, my private course, which is like, it's all recorded material. And then I have a little community. I do like a live call once a week, was selling for $3,500, right? So like, that's, that's how dire things have gotten kind of in medicine. And it's really, really rough. Sorry, please continue. I wanted to like put that for context as an anchoring point.
Yeah. So going back to the insurance part, they're the ones dictating where healthcare is going. So if you're in a space right now and understand like where is probably the best place to put your focus and energy into, where I actually did it was like where are the two entities that have the most leverage, and usually it was always cardiac and neurosurgery because they bring the most money to the hospitals. But the insurance companies are now dictating like what these implant prices can be charged for because they're the ones dictating what the doctors will be paid for and what they're willing to pay for our products now too. So if your product today is not considered a necessity, I'd highly advise looking into products that are more a necessity. And the mere fact that like these ancillary products that are like cool, nice to haves probably don't resonate
Oh yeah.
with hospitals
Yep.
because during COVID, every hospital lost around $50 million. So they're all trying to play this recovery stage. So like nothing to bash on like these nice to have products of lighted this. And
No, it's a fact though, man. It's a fact. Like if insurance is not going to cover it, like it doesn't matter how much the doctor likes it. It's just not going to happen.
100%. And that's like where you want to build your model and your funnel in a way that like allows scalability, knowing that like your product is going to have scale. And like the reason why I developed the Kerrison is like, first off, it's a mandatory plus of every single case. Second of all, it's a neurosurgeon or a surgeon who brings the most money to the hospital. Third, if the thing that they break down, the surgeon makes a fit out of it and they have to get new ones. So you want to make sure you're on the forefront of all those three things. And that's how I kind of build up products now that I either sell or create.
Yeah. No, I agree. And again, this is where I'm kind of excited because of these sort of things, it's really going to force better innovation in our industry because again, like, okay, let's look at robotics. I love robots. I mean, that's what I built my career in. That's what I know the best. But like, if you look at the spine world, I was part of the first robotic spine company, which was Mazor. Now it's a part of Medtronic. There's like 8 or 9 or 10 robotic spine companies, and they all do the same thing for the same part of the case. And it's just like an incremental improvement. And so like, I think like companies who are going to like, again, if you follow the money, like investors are only going to invest in things that are going to have like massive paradigm shifting improvements, or it's going to be like a necessity where it's no more about like, if it's just a little incremental improvement, it's like, oh, this is nice to have. Nobody's going to get it. Nobody's, and even I would say even doctors to that extent, because the surgeon, they got like 1 or 2 times every year or two where they can go and advocate for something, and they're not going to do that on something that's going to get disapproved or like, add to the hospital bill, and they have to kind of explain that to the C-suite,
Yeah, I look at it like they have the revolving gun with like 6 bullets, and that 6 bullets probably last on a 2-year trajectory. So you got to make sure your bullet counts. And this is like kind of going back to this healthcare industry and medical device. It's unfortunate where insurance companies are going with the reimbursement and where labor cost is going up. And at some point, there's going to be an inflection point where those things are not going to make sense. So what's going to compromise? And I think once something starts compromising, which is probably the quality of talent of service giving to the physicians and the hospitals, I think a pendulum switch will start to happen one more time. Because we haven't seen that yet. Like I think the bigger companies can afford having market share and paying people less, but then you're going to get less quality talent rather than the guys who've been in this space for like 15, 20 years. I know you had a distributor on not long ago from the Northwest who's probably been doing this.
Oh, Heath Chapman, yeah.
For 15 plus years, and he's probably seen a lot more of a trajectory of how this industry has changed over the last several years. And it's really sad to see, and maybe we took advantage of it a little bit too much back in like the early 2000s. Nonetheless, to see this much of a decline in an area where real estate is only going up, coffee's going up, food's going up, everything else is going up, but why is the healthcare going down? And that's the scarcity where like I have this inflection point why I start other businesses as well, is because like I can't be in a declining market. Like that's where it just doesn't make sense for me as a business owner. Is like if I'm an investor looking at this overall business, is like, well, where is the run rate of growth? Well, investor, this is declining right now at 15, 20% every year because these implant prices or these instruments are just not being compensated for at the hospitals at the same rate it was 3 years ago. Which it's hard to build a business model that makes sense off that.
100%, man. And again, like, for me, I identify mainly as a marketing and sales guy. But like, if I had to place my bets, I place my bets any day on somebody who's like a mediocre marketer and salesperson, but they have a great market versus somebody who's great at those things and they have like an okay market. Like the market just dictates so much. Look, everybody's favorite MedTech story, which is Intuitive Surgical. When I talk to the guys who are like the highest up in Intuitive Surgical in the early days, like VP of worldwide sales, CMO, etc. All of them say the same thing, which was like the pull of the market was kind of like a big reason why Intuitive became who they were,
Right.
But I will say, like, there's something, if we go out of med device and just look at med tech and like medicine in general, I think it's a really good place to be in right now because, again, 20% of our GDP is spent on healthcare and medicine. It's like $3 trillion. It's growing 4 to 5% every year. And so if you have these massive strategics like Microsoft, Apple, Google, who have a fiduciary responsibility to grow, Apple's not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, we're going to start making furniture. There's a reason why they're all like looking into healthcare. But I think also because of TikTok, Instagram, there's this phenomenon happening. And we can credit like Andrew Huberman and Peter Thiel and these people as making it more popular, which is people getting more into consumer based healthcare, right? So like biohacking on the sleep side, Whoop is valued at like $7-8 billion right now. And everybody thought a while back, they're like, oh, this is like a low tech version of the Apple Watch. Why would it work? Well, it does,
Yeah, I mean, don't get turned away from healthcare just because of some of the things we've talked about with where it's going. There's a component that if you are in the healthcare space to take note of, that understanding how critical your body is by understanding all the diseases out there and what you're seeing from being exposed to the operating room, all the different diseases out there, will allow you to become like a better overall human being for yourself. So I say that like I took that as like my competitive advantage of like being in the space by understanding, all the brain tumors I saw, all the different facial reconstructive surgeries I saw, all the spine surgeries I saw, made me like, okay, I need to stretch more. I need better quality sleep. I need better nutrition. I don't want to have, colon cancer if I have a lot of diseases in my body right now. Like, all these things started playing a factor that if you understand this space really well, it can make you a better person on the outside. And that's why I'm all into like my weird, biohacking things of cold plunging, sauning, mouth taping, these funky things that like, serve to a small niche of people. But it's allowed me to become that because of all the diseases that I've seen throughout healthcare.
100%, man. 100%. Look, it's been a blast. Definitely got to have you back on. But just kind of wrap up, I want to do some quick, like rapid fire questions, kind of fun.
Yeah.
So first one is like, what you mentioned one before, but it could be a different one. What's a book that you feel like you gift or recommend most often? It doesn't have to be on business; it can be in anything.
Yeah, it'd probably be this book called Vivid Vision. I love this. I actually have a tattoo of it on my arm. Vivid Vision is awesome. It's written by Cameron Herold, who really talks about how to reverse engineer your 3-year dream. So, we all have a vision that we want to go accomplish, and how vivid that can become is something that's going to dictate, how you're going to get there. And I think 3 years is a true metric that you can really set forth, because 5 is a little bit too long. Sometimes 1 is too short. And he talks about just how to reverse engineer that. And I remember reading that where I was 25 at the time, 26 at the time. And I purely just wanted to know that like I wasn't going to just be running around in Los Angeles in my car the rest of my life. I wanted to get more leverage out of my life. And I just drew this whole map out of what I wanted to go create out of my business and out of my life, and it allowed me to go do so.
Fantastic. Yeah. And it's funny. I know about that book. I might have even bought it, but I need to read it. So that's a good prompt for me to read it. Do you recommend reading it or listening to it?
I like reading it and taking notes, unless it's the voice of the author, not this robotic person on Audible. That's the only way I can listen to stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Okay. Second thing is, look, so in the biohacking world, this is actually the first time I'm asking this question because I don't have a lot of people come on who at least are self confess that they're like biohackers like me. Better mouth tape, I love and everything, but outside of your own product, like what's a cool biohacking product that you really like a lot?
I would say there's 2.
And I'm gonna limit it to something that most of the people listening can buy. So we can't like infrared sauna and ice bath can't be one of those things. Although like that would be my go-to. But yeah, something that's like less than $100.
Less than $100. That's tough. So let me come back to that.
Or if it's more than $100, we'll come back to that. What's like for those who are interested in like just optimizing their sleep, taping their mouth, I wholeheartedly agree. And again, like you don't have to use Sam's product, although I recommend it. You can just start with some regular 3M tape, although you'll run into the same issue I had, which is at some point at night it'll come off. But taping the mouth is one thing. What are some key things that you recommend people that it's like, hey, if you want to get optimal sleep, like do these things? Do you have a couple of things that you can give as tips?
Yeah, I think big one, even like let's say you don't want a mouth tape, is no blue light before you go to bed and like you're properly hydrated. The blue light, I kid you not, I notice a huge difference. It like depletes my body. I'm
When
feeling
you say blue light, you're talking about like TV, computer, etc.
yeah, and that's hard, especially in our industry because we want to check all our emails at night before we go to bed and social media. But these are all things that are really destructing our attention spans and destructing our physical body in a way that's allowing us to grow properly. There's so much data behind the stress that all the blue light's putting on you when you're going to bed. So if you can just remove that for the last hour when you go to bed, and then like the hour when you wake up. So I wake up around like 4:35, and I cold plunge and do no cell phone until like 5:30, because no one's gonna call me around that time anyways. That's like my rhythm and cadence.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree with that. And again, even me, like, it's funny, like during the week, my recovery and sleep is just phenomenal lately. But on the weekends, like it'll get into yellow. And part of the reason why is that at night, I decide I'm like, oh yeah, let me just like play around on my phone, look at social media. It's just a terrible idea. It's just
Yeah,
so bad. And even like I remember like a few weeks ago, like you don't realize how subtle this can impact you. Like a few weeks ago, I remember it was like I usually try and get into bed at like 9:30. I remember like at 8 o'clock, I was doing something and I was gonna look at my phone. I was like, whatever. And I opened Instagram for 1 second, and I remember I watched one thing, which was like some video from this insane channel called Nature is Metal. If you're into wildlife, but like really messed up parts of it, like Nature is Metal is one thing. Is and it showed like I don't know, some lions hunting something. It was pretty brutal. And I just watched that like for a second, and I went to bed. And the next day, my recovery, like I woke up so many times and I was so bad. I was like, why is that? I'm like, oh, you know why? It's like subconscious. Like I saw this kind of like graphic thing on Instagram for just a little bit of it, and that was the last thing I saw before I went to bed. And so it does have a great, I don't know. I think like these things that we mention for better sleep, it's simple, but it's not easy. Like it's a simple thing. Like don't look at your email, don't look at your phone an hour before bed, but it's not easy. But I think it's such an important thing,
yeah.
you know?
Going back to $100 item, I just forgot, but I've realized something I do. I do it like 3 times a week, I'll be honest, and I have no affiliation with them, but I use this company called Queen of Thrones, and it's castor oil on a pack that you put on your liver. And again, not many people know about this, but it
Queen
really,
of Thrones? I don't know about this.
yeah.
This is
So
Queen of Thrones. Okay.
it's putting castor oil, and it's like the type of castor oil that you're getting. It's this high quality glass. And if you're able to put that on your liver when you go to bed, it's so good for your hormones. It's really good for inflammation and leaky gut, really good for constipation, all these different things that have high values to your overall health from just using castor oil. I love doing that just a couple times a week.
Interesting. I'm looking right now. So essentially you buy this thing. It looks like a really large eye blindfold, and you coat it with castor oil, and it's essentially you have some dermal absorption.
Yep.
Interesting. I'll tell you what, like before we start, like, so one thing that I've really been, I've gotten into, and this is just kind of like on my own, I thought about this. The largest organ in your body is your skin, and your skin is like a living thing, like it absorbs things. And so I start like, I remember someone post about this. I'm like, that's a really good point, which is like, if you would not eat it, why would you put it on your skin? And I was like, that's a really good point. So I do when I go out, rare occasions, I'll put on a little bit of like natural sunscreen because like, I don't, I want to age gracefully. But in general, like lotion, I stopped using lotion. Now I usually use tallow or like coconut oil or something like literally coconut oil from the store,
Yeah.
But I think like this whole this other concept, I think this is going to be a new thing for people, is like, what are the kind of things you put on your skin that gets absorbed into your body? And so this one, I'll have to check it out. For those who are interested, you can go to shopqueenofthrones.com. And again, no affiliation, neither of us, but that's a good one. I like that. Awesome. Sam, before we sign off, where can people find you?
So my social media handles is the Sam Mahmood, and then I'm on LinkedIn again. My name is Sam Mahmood, Mahmood. If you have any questions, shoot me a message. I'm happy to respond to anything you guys might have.
Perfect. And again, for those who are interested, again, I have no affiliation with it. I just really like the product. I think it's fantastic. Give it a try. Go check out bettermouthtape.com. And if you want, maybe kind of a very low, easy way to get into it first is like just find some regular medical tape at home and try it out yourself and see how you sleep overnight. That being said, everybody, this has been another episode of The State of MedTech. I'm your host, Omar Khateeb, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of The State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has a executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.